with men, if you are laid back, if you don't complain, if you're not on their ass, they tend to get lazy.
Okay, here's my intro. Let me just erase that right there and go simple. My name, A-Z, no, I don't like that. A-Z-I-Z-A-K-I-B-I-B-I.
Hey, welcome back to my channel. I am Aziza Kibibi. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe so you can be notified of any time that I upload videos, go live, do community posts, share information, all that good stuff. And if you are already subscribed, shout out to all of my subscribers. You know I love you. Today's video is about a question that I don't know. I feel like when I speak publicly, I don't get this question. And maybe because people, my audience in life, meaning when I speak through my organization or I, do a book signing or something like that, maybe my audience that I meet face to face are a little more shy about asking me this question. But I do get it often in comments on my social media platforms and of course on YouTube. And that question being, what was it like getting into a relationship after escaping my father? Or another way to put it, if the abuse that I suffered at the hands of my father affected my personal relationships. So in short, yes, of course. How could it not? I mean, how could it not? The first relationship that we build when we are first brought to this plane, to this dimension on this planet, is the relationship that you have with your parents. And oftentimes there is, this kind of cliche that the first man that a girl actually quote unquote falls in love with, and this is coming from Freud, this is a Freudian theory, is her father, and vice versa for the boys. So children tend to, as they're growing up, as they're reaching adolescence, look for traits in those that they want to partner with or that they want to mate with. They look for traits that are similar to their parents. So if you have a traumatic relationship with your parent, of course it's going to have an impact on how you see members of the opposite sex, or the same sex. That we have to take that into consideration as well. So in my situation, yes, what I went through with my father did have a huge impact on my relationships with other people. Not just because, of course, I didn't trust them and I felt like, I didn't know if everybody thought the same way as my dad did. For most part, he told me, even when he told me some of the things he was doing to me, he said that all men did this with their daughters. So there's a lot of confusion there. Now, of course, that was when I was a child. As I got older and being aware of this secret that had to be kept, no matter how special he made it seem to be, no matter how much of an honor he tried to convince the girls in his family, his daughters, that it was what he was doing to us, in our hearts, just feeling the pain and the dread and the suffering, all of that, of course, that we're aware of that. We're humans. And I think it leads into the argument of nature versus nurture. I think when we come to this existence, we have a certain knowledge already. And then, of course, then nurture your environment that contributes to then the decisions that you make, what you consider is normal, how you're going to act within your culture or within your group. So, being traumatized by your parent is going to have an effect on your relationships with other people, male or female. So more specifically in my case, there was fear. There was just genuine fear. I went through the point of like, if I was around a man and he moved a little too suddenly or raised his hand, especially if we was in some form of disagreement, and this could be someone like a stranger on the street, my reflex was to duck. My reflex was to like, you know, and I had to literally had to open myself up to the possibility that every motion a man made with their hand was not to strike me. So I had to kind of get used to that. And then I was so obsessed with what people were thinking and what men were thinking. And that was something that I developed through the course of my childhood and my adolescence, because I had to learn how to anticipate my father's moods. And in doing that, I then, like, trying to figure out what he was thinking was my life. And he would trick me and he would test me a lot. So going out into the real world and trying to develop relationships with other people, yeah, I became obsessed with what they were thinking and what they were thinking about me. And honestly, I did not believe a lot of what people said. I did, so I definitely had trust issues. But then rationalizing that, you know, this world is continuing to turn. There are beautiful things in this world, and people contribute to that. That not everybody was my dad. I had to rationalize that. I had to literally just tell myself, like, look, not everyone is your dad. There's no way that God or the universe created everyone as horrible and as evil as my father. And in just knowing that, I basically had to take like leaps of faith in getting to know people. And I want to make a point to state that went for women as well. Because yes, there was the issues that I had with my mom. Even though she was an abused woman, there were, you know, her own 2 cents, I guess you can say. She contributed to the abuse that I suffered because she enabled a lot. And then of course there was my dad's girlfriend. So yeah, my relationships with women was also affected. Okay, so story time. My first date. So my first real date was actually a date, well, let me not say my first. So my first traditional, what I would consider a traditional date, meaning like, you know, you go out, you have dinner, was with who eventually became my first boyfriend. There was this guy that lived in a town that I lived in New Jersey. I had gotten my kids back, and I don't know who's watching, but y'all remember Blockbuster? Well, anyway, there was a guy who worked at a barbershop right next to my local Blockbuster. So anytime I would go to like rent movies for me and the kids to have movie night, he was outside, usually like smoking or just chilling and hanging out. He was West Indian, and he always said hello to me. He always complimented me. And for a good 2, almost 3 years, he was very consistent in asking me out, trying to talk to me. And then once I worked up the nerve and I became brave enough, I decided to like say, okay, you know, let me get your number. We exchanged numbers. I called him, I spoke to him, and I liked him. Okay, so yeah, I liked him, and I would have to say my experience with him was like, it wasn't, I can't say fairy tale, but I was very elated in my relationship with him because he did what I had come to idealize as what boyfriends did with their girlfriends. So like, he took me shopping, he took me to my first concert, Carrie Fest in New York. He took me out to dinner, he took me to the club, he took me to parties like on a regular, like every weekend. He just did stuff with me. He was very happy and proud to introduce me to his friends and his people. And he wanted me to show up to his job like all the time. I mean, I was working, I had my own job, plus I was taking care of the kids. So, but I have to say that my experience with my first boyfriend taught me a lot about what I believed and what I idealized a relationship should be. I think I also did a lot of practicing in that relationship. Like, I practiced standing up for myself. I practiced saying no. I practiced, you know, ignoring his phone calls. Like, there was a lot of experimenting. If you are watching, you know who you are. So first, let me say thank you. Thank you to that guy. Because I practiced a lot, even though it was not emotionally driven, some of my responses, or me being annoyed, because I tell you something about me, I'm very laid back and I'm extremely patient. But I had learned in that relationship that with men, and I don't want to just say this blanket across the board, but I feel like with men, if you are laid back, if you don't complain, if you're not on their ass, they tend to get lazy. So I am not really like that in a relationship. And I learned the negative impacts of being like that in this first relationship. Now, this was my first official relationship, but it was not, how can I put it? My first experience with a man outside my dad. But I'm gonna have to save that for another video because that was extremely complicated. So on that note, thank you for listening. I answered that question because, yes, again, a lot of people has asked me that question, and you know, I felt like that my experience was, even though I was older, I mean, I was like 26 or 27 by the time I embarked on this relationship. And I was still learning a lot about the world, about myself. My kids were my top priority, but I wanted to feel what it was like having a boyfriend, which, you know, I had never had before. So I just went for it. And it was fun while it lasted. How it ended? Again, this video is, we don't have enough time today. So on that note, again, thank you for listening. I'm Aziza Kibibi. Make sure you subscribe if you like that video, share, like, and be blessed, for you are a blessing. Bye.